Thank you very much, Mr. Yar. Mr. Hannan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It does seem odd, given what's happening outside this chamber, the bank runs, the economic crisis, that we are spending time talking about major accident hazards involving dangerous substances. But then it occurred to me that there is a certain grisly aptness in this report. The most dangerous substance of all turned out to be the euro. I don't mean that in a literal sense. Well, I understand that some people did have an allergic reaction to the particular kind of alloy used in the coins, but even I am not going to try and turn that into an argument against the single currency. But what happened was that our leaders, so taken with their dream of political union, disregarded all of the economic danger signs with the calamitous consequences that we can see around us today. Poverty, preventable deflation, emigration, despair, and the prospect of endless tax rises, all because we were so in love with this dream of ever closer union. Outside of the European Parliament in Brussels, there's that statue of a female figure holding aloft the euro sign as a symbol to the greatness of the currency. Years from now, when there's tumbleweed blowing through that part of town and the European Parliament is in ruins, archaeologists will find its vast and trunkless legs of stone and see the inscription on the pedestal, "Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair."
Thank you very much, Mr. Hannan. Yes, we listened to what you had to say, even if it wasn't really on the matter at hand. Ms. Basescu. Thank you very much. And I call Mr. Hannan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. The right of every citizen to deal with Brussels institutions in his own language is one of the few remaining signs that this is an association of nations rather than a single polity. I have very little patience with the argument which one hears very often, even in my constituency, that why doesn't the EU as a whole, or at least the European Parliament, adopt just English or just English and French or just English, French and German, remove the requirement of the EU to produce everything in every national language, and you simultaneously remove the biggest obstacle to a superstate. That said, we are adopting, if not in the literal sense, something of a common language in the way in which we debate these matters in this chamber. The phrases we use, which one never hears anywhere except here: respecting the principles of subsidiarity and proportionality, bringing Europe closer to the people, the answer is more Europe, not less Europe, the people are demanding that we do more. These are phrases that you only ever hear from Eurocrats and MEPs. It's difficult not to think of the appendix to George Orwell's 1984, where he talks about duck speak, the engagement of the larynx without the engagement of the higher brain centres at all. When you talk in cliché, you're almost certainly thinking in cliché, and that's why we're in the mess we're in.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hannan. I now call Mr. Tackler. Thank you very much. That was the last explanation of vote on public consultations, and we now move on to motions for a resolution on the situation in Tibet. First, Mr. Hannan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Well, if I may continue briefly with my 1984 analogy, we're all familiar in politics with the concept of doublethink, the ability to hold two contradictory views simultaneously in your mind. It comes out in all sorts of ways. For example, a lot of people will be aggressively in favour of the rights of indigenous communities in poor parts of the world to be left undisturbed, and yet will be aggressively in favour of immigration and multiculturalism in other parts of the world. And that's human nature. I suppose we all do that. But Tibet is a particularly egregious example of it. In this chamber, we like to pat ourselves on the back for being on the side of democracy and freedom and self-determination. But when we try and apply that same logic to the European Union, the doublethink kicks in. If Tibetans are better off living under their own laws and their own people, then why are not Portuguese or Germans or British people or any other democratic community in Europe? How extraordinary that, having developed this idea of national self-determination and exported it around the world, we've turned our backs on it here in the continent it came from.
Thank you, Mr. Hannan. Mr. Butik.
Member States.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nicolai. Mr. Hannan.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Towards a job-rich recovery. That really is a report title that could have come straight out of the Ministry of Truth, and I promise that's going to be my last Orwellian reference of the day. We've had all these promises of job-rich recoveries before. We had one when I was a new MEP. It was the Lisbon Agenda. Do you remember that? It was going to give Europe the most successful, competitive, knowledge-based economy in the world by the year 2010. Well, 2010 has come and gone, and as Sarah Palin might ask, how's that working out for you all? Then it was the euro. We've forgotten that this was one of the great arguments we were given in favour of monetary union, that it would boost employment throughout the eurozone. Again, how's that working out? And now we're on to our latest conceit, our latest bit of hubris. The truth is, we politicians can't create jobs. We can't legislate them into effect. Even if I employ somebody in my office, I'm doing so with taxpayers' money that is being taken out of the private sector where it would have been used more efficiently. The one thing we could do is stop destroying jobs with pointless, intrusive, pettifogging regulation to allow the entrepreneurs who are the real drivers of the economy to create jobs and employment.
Thank you, Mr. Hannan.